Welcome, everyone, to our new episode of The Quad. And I'm here in the studio with my wonderful co-host, Emily Schrader, human rights activist and journalist. And over there in Canada, Vivian Berkovich, former ambassador of Canada to Israel. And unfortunately, this week, Ashira Solomon, our fourth co-host, is not here physically with us. So this week, we wanted to bring a little bit of light in this tunnel of darkness that we've all been stuck with the last 7 weeks. And, and we've all been at the receiving end of so much recrimination and hatred, especially those of us who are very active also online, those of us who get interviewed on TV. And so we wanted to dedicate the show this week to our allies, because however many haters we have, we also have a very significant number of allies. And I think we've all felt their love. And I think their love and support is even more significant during these times when we're getting beaten down left and right. And so I wanted to start to talk about who we see today as our major allies in the struggle against Hamas, against Islamic fundamentalism, against evil, against Iran. There's no shortage on the list of people that are against the free and fair society that Israel is. So let's start with you, Emily, and this goes more into your human rights activist hat. So tell us who you've seen as our major allies in the last few weeks.
Well, I don't think anyone will be surprised to hear me say the Iranian people, but it really is true. I mean, the response we've seen from social media to, organizing, not participating, organizing rallies in support of Israel, it's been the Iranian people. And I think the reason for that is that they understand more than any other group of people, including everyone in the West, society, socially speaking. They don't understand what Hamas really is, and Iranians do, because they've had to deal with it. And even if they weren't born under the Islamic Republic, they have family who was. So we've seen it's a little bit surprising to me that they've been so vocal, because they haven't been as vocal in the past, probably because of the oppression of the regime. We know that their families pay the price.
Are you talking about the Iranian people in Iran, or are you talking about the Iranian diaspora?
Both. So in the diaspora, we've seen rallies and events of solidarity throughout this entire period of war. Even last week, there was one in London. It's been in Belgium, it's been in Canada, it's been in America.
They've also joined in with the Jewish rallies, right?
And yes, they've teamed up with the Jewish community as well. But the most interesting thing is the contacts that I have inside of Iran, who also are very, very supportive of Israel. I mean, I'm getting messages of people saying, like, why doesn't Israel just strike Khomeini's house in Iran? Like, they're a little crazy, but they're very, very supportive. And they even did like a whole campaign of putting stamps on the money of the Islamic Republic. And it says like death to Hamas, death to the Ayatollah. Really? And they put it in Hebrew. They put it in Hebrew
wow.
too. So which is actually a really interesting tactic, because then it's very difficult to trace, right? Because it's on money. So how do they know who did what when? So it's a clever idea, but just a small symbols of resistance from them.
But they've been very brave, because they could really wind up in jail or beaten up. And I think there was also kind of a semi-demonstration at a football game, soccer game for those Americans. Yeah. So tell us about that.
There was a football match where the Iranian regime brought out a Palestinian flag in solidarity with Gaza, and the crowd started chanting. The translation is, take the Palestinian flag and shove it up your...
Okay, we get it.
And the whole crowd was chanting this because they're sick of their money going to the Palestinian terrorists. It's not even going to the people, it's going to the terrorists. So they know what's up. They've had enough experience with this to not want anything to do with
I think
this.
that if anybody wants to know what Hamas complete rule would look like, just look at Iran and look at the fact that when they got into power, women lost their jobs. Women who were judges in the courts ended up being secretaries in the same courts, because it was literally, for anybody who watched A Handmaid's Tale, which is a show about essentially a Holocaust for women, this is what it is in Iran, not just for women, of course, but for men. For women, are really the first victims of the repressive Islamist regime that they had there, which Hamas would love to carry out here in the whole region and in the world. Vivian, who do you think are our allies, or who have you been impressed with, or who do you believe should have been our allies and didn't show up?
I think that, to me, the two most kind of absent allies or groups of allies would be Muslim communities globally, particularly in the West.
Why, Vivian? Why Muslim communities?
Because I think that there's a responsibility given what's going on. It is perceived to be an issue with respect, having to do with Islam, having to do with liberation of a particular Islamic nationality, Islamic-based nationality, Palestinians. They don't care about the Christian Palestinians, right? They care about the Muslim Palestinians. The Christians are shut out, which I know is something that really bothers many Christian Palestinians and Arab Israelis. But you have this mass liberation movement, as they like to brand it, freedom. They're freedom fighters, and they are terrorists, and they've done all the horrible things we know. So where is the voice of all those moderate Muslims that supposedly exist out there? Where are they? Why aren't they speaking up and at least saying, oh my gosh, this terror, this mutilation, this hostage taking, all of these extreme breaches of international law, that's not Islam.
Exactly.
It's not Islam.
Hashtag not in my name. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, how can you all be silent? It's like, it's not even like there are sort of sporadic voices or weak voices. There are no voices. There are the lone voices out there like the Bassem Ids and the Green Prince, the son of Hamas, and, you know, the Joseph Haddads. Like, there are voices out there, but there are no groups. The groups are silent.
That's a good point.
You know, so, and it's a very, very important issue. And I think it sort of feeds into the other half of my equation, or my non-ally allyship, like where are you, our natural allies, is women's groups. I mean, all of this
shocking,
horrific, extreme sexual violence, just for example, and against women, but not just against women, also against men, we know.
Oh, yeah.
And, right?
Yeah.
It's sexual violence, period. And it's like, you know, as we all know, the hashtag Me Too, unless you're a Jew. Where are they? Why do they not speak? Why are they not horrified? And, you know, it wasn't until, I always have to slip Canada in there. It wasn't until late last week. Come on, you got to give me kudos for that. Until late last week, when the UN Women's something, one of their main women's bodies, finally came out and said, you know, geez, that all of that sexual assault, that was really kind of nasty, and we don't really like it. Oh, and that was 49 days in, and only then did the Canadian ambassador to Israel wake up and say, word for word, oh my God, all that sexual violence, that was really bad. I'm like, really? You didn't figure that out 49 days ago? So, like,
were they waiting for permission?
Is going.
Were they waiting for permission from the UN of all bodies to then be outraged? What happened?
I don't know. Where's Michelle Obama on this too?
Oh, by the way,
I was going to say, Michelle Obama.
Where is she?
Cheerleader for the Nigerian girls, and not a single word on this entire episode. And by the way, the UN tweet that came out, you know, they deleted it. They deleted
it.
And they've said nothing.
They did.
Yeah. They said something.
They deleted it.
Maybe the Canadian ambassador also deleted it after the delete of the UN.
Yeah. Nah, it must have been my tweet going after her that did it. Okay.
Oh my God.
So those are my allies.
Well, not much of an allies, but I want to pick up on the thing that you said about the lone Arab voices, because I'm going to push back a little bit, and it's not easy to be a lone Arab voice standing up against Hamas. I had the privilege a couple of weeks ago when I was in New York to have dinner with Nusayr Yassin, who is better known as Naz Daily, who is an Arab Israeli, Palestinian Israeli, however he wants to call himself.
Get around.
Yes, thankfully.
Unbelievable.
So I went to I was in New York. I didn't know I was going to have dinner with him. I went for dinner with my Moroccan friend Shama Meshtali, which some of us know, who's a wonderful activist, a human rights activist like you, Emily. And she said, oh, by the way, Naz Daly's coming for dinner. I'm like, wow. I wanted to know, because I wanted the opportunity to thank him, because literally the day after 7th of October, the 8th or the 9th of October, he put out, and it couldn't have been easy for him, he put out a statement on social media saying, I used to be Palestinian Israeli, then I was Israeli Palestinian, and now I'm just Israeli.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of guts. And when I saw him, I thanked him. And I said, what's been the reaction? And he said, well, I've lost a lot of friends. So it's easy for us to talk about the fact that there are no, the groups are unforgivable. But the lone Arab voices, it's much harder for them, even though it's glaring them in the face, even though the countries where a lot of these Arabs live in, like the UAE, Bahrain, they've gotten rid of their fundamentalists. And they've done it many years ago. And yet there's voices also like Lucy Arish, who's a TV presenter in Israel. And she also came out and said, in English, she said, this is not in my name. So these are the lone voices. But then I want to take, in the name of a Shira. Yeah, go on.
I have to jump in very quickly. I don't remember his name, but there's the young Swedish guy, Swedish Palestinian.
Yes.
Who put a,
Loai?
right?
I want to say his name is Loai.
Loai is the
Yes,
Emirati.
yes.
No, not Loai Sharif, Loai Ahmed, right?
Oh, okay.
I think that's him.
Why is right?
Yes.
And he put out a very powerful video that maybe we should find and put up on the show after. Very powerful video, same vein, obviously taking a lot of heat for it. So my comments, just to be clear, were not sort of, directed at the individuals because it's a huge price. But I want it because I understand it's a tremendously difficult thing for them to do. But there are organizations that should be speaking up. And that
yes, and there are many of these voices, like our friend Loai Sharif, Ahmed Amjad Taha, who I interviewed, and other people like that. And I have to say also at the same time that I have a lot of friends or were friends in the Emirates who have really disappointed me. I've got friends who check in on me every day, and I've got friends I look at their social media, and they've gone to the dark side. Yeah. And they haven't really bothered. Yeah,
I know really, a few of those as well.
I'm really upset about that because we've had 3 years of deep friendships of something we were building together. And instead of picking the phone and saying, Flo, you know what, I'm annoyed about this, or I'm annoyed about that, and let's talk it out, just go on social media and start talking about Israeli aggression or the Zionist aggression. It's very, very disappointing to me. Ashira wanted to talk about, and I want to talk about as well, I will talk in her name partly, about the unlikely allies, or maybe they were likely, we just didn't know about them, the indigenous population of New Zealand, the Maoris. I think many of us have seen that incredibly inspiring dance of war that they put out. And
the haka dance.
The haka dance.
You know, the irony is that the anti-Israel activists, one of the Free Palestine protests, they copied the same thing.
What do you mean? They did that?
They literally co-opted it.
Well,
they tried.
They copy everything. Everything is kind of a dark reflection of what we do. There's no creative ideas. But yeah, the haka dance. But more than that, they came on a mission here for the first week of the war. They were on their way. They were in Dubai. It was Saturday, the 7th of October. They could have canceled, and they carried on and they showed up, and I met with them. And they asked me if I would help them open a First Nations embassy in Jerusalem. It's not a diplomatic thing. I mean, it's not an official diplomatic thing, but it's a symbolic thing. And it will involve, Vivian, First Nations Canadians. There are a few who actually support the fact that we Jews are the indigenous people of this land. They know that we've been here for thousands of years. And so I wanted to inform everyone that that's moving forward. And please God, we will all be there at the opening, hopefully in less than a few months, of the First Nations, First Peoples, Indigenous Peoples Embassy in the city of Jerusalem as a symbolic act of friendship stance.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I just think this is so incredible to see indigenous groups embracing the fact that the Jewish people are the indigenous people to this land. And of course, in my personal view, I'm not against Palestinians having self-determination or a state. That's not the equation.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, a lot of Palestinian activists have consistently, it's been a staple of their narrative to erase our history and to erase our connection. And I think it's good that we see indigenous groups pushing back and saying, no, we are like the Jewish people.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of good people that we know, like Ateret Violet, who set up, really visionary organization about 7 years ago called Indigenous Bridges to do exactly that. And she's very close to the Native Americans. And again, they will all be here at the opening. So I look forward to all sorts of incredible, gestures like this from the First Nations people who really have been unlikely in a way, but a real ally to the state of Israel. So thank you all for that. And talking about allies, I was very happy to have spoken to a woman who's recently become my friend, another incredibly brave Dalia. This one's called Dalia Ziada. Dalia Ziada is the co-founder of a think tank, a liberal think tank in Cairo. She was interviewed the first week of the war, and she said something very simple. People who massacre innocents are bad. Hamas is bad. Since then, she's had to leave her country under threats, violent threats. Her family was threatened. And we got to speak to her a little earlier on. Dalia Ziada, thank you so much for joining us on our show, The Quad. And you have a fascinating story, Dalia. And I really wanted the world to understand what you've been through in the last few months. So maybe you can take us to the beginning. Where are you from?
Thank you so much, Fleur. I'm so happy to be with you, of course. And it's an interesting story, and I'm in the middle of it right now. So let's start by the question is, I'm from Egypt. I co-founded the Liberal Democracy Institute in 2015. Before that, I was working with Ibn Khaldun Center for Development Studies in Cairo. This is one of the oldest, or perhaps the oldest think tank in the Arab world. And before that, I was working with the American Islamic Congress in the US, and part of my work was about interfaith dialogue between Muslim and Jewish people in the US.
That's amazing, Dalia. So October the 7th happens, the terrible massacre that we've experienced here in Israel. And you did an interview about October 7th. What happened?
So actually, when the October 7th massacre happened, at the beginning, I was not very angered by it because of what was being said in the media, in our media, I mean the Egyptian media and the Arab media, that portrayed the whole thing as if it was kind of a clash between Israeli soldiers and Hamas militants. So I thought, okay, fine, it's just another clash. But 2 days later, I was invited to a video conference by the Israeli Ministry of Defense and Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And in this video conference, hundreds of journalists from all over the Arab world were invited. And it was in Arabic, by the way. And I saw the truth with my own eyes in this video conference. I saw the videos collected from the cameras of the houses and the streets, and even the cameras carried by Hamas militants on their mobile phones while they were filming and very proud of what they have been doing. And I saw with my own eyes women being raped, people killed for no good reason, houses being invaded for no good reason, and people literally being kidnapped in their pajamas, including the elderly, including toddlers and children, and blood everywhere. It was horrific in every way. It's so shocking. So as soon as I finished watching, attending this video conference, I just decided to tell the truth. I have a good following on social media, so I went to social media and I wrote, our media is lying, and here is the truth. Here is what happened on October 7th.
You're saying that the Arab media in general and the Egyptian media in particular were talking about October 7th like it was a regular clash that happens once a year between Israel and Hamas. And then you saw the different story and you started telling the truth.
Exactly. So I thought someone should tell the truth because people deserve to know that this is not what was happening, and people deserve to know that Israel's retaliation was not out of the blue, because actually part of the lies also that was spreading during these days at the beginning of the massacre and the Israeli operation, and so in response to Hamas work, was that especially in the Arab media, like it was something like as if Israel has decided to wake up, has like Israeli military has just woke up one day and decided to kill some Palestinians
Out of the blue.
Exactly, for no reason.
So, Dalia, you started to talk about it, and you also did some media interviews. Is that true?
That's right. After I wrote about it on social media, I was invited by some media outlets, and also a think tank called the Institute for National Security Studies. It's an independent think tank affiliated to Tel Aviv University. It's not affiliated to the government or Mossad or any of the things that were said later about it. And this interview went viral. The interview with INSS in particular went viral because it was in Arabic and in English. I made 2 interviews with them. So the Arabic one literally went viral, and it was viral in a negative way, I would say, because people were using it to attack me rather than because my intention was to help my people, the Arab people, to open their eyes to the truth. But actually, they used it as a justification to attack me, and it went very bad. It was not only limited to social media attacks, but even state-sponsored media stations in Egypt and in different places in the Arab countries started to attack me and call me a Zionist, a traitor, and such things. I thought things will stop at that limit. But unfortunately, this hype around my interview with INSS led to radical Islamists, namely the Salafists, who are unfortunately everywhere in Egypt, to seek taking revenge at me. They went to my mother's house. Some of them went to my mother's house and looking for me, and they wanted to hunt me down. And unfortunately, even when I reported this to authorities, and so no one wanted to help me because I'm normalizing with Israel. So in their eyes, I have already committed a crime.
Let's put this in context. In a country that has peace with Israel, Egypt.
Exactly. That did not make any sense to me. And the even worse, like 1 day later or so, I found out that there are legal claims being filed against me, accusing me of spying for the Israeli Mossad and threatening Egypt's national security and spreading false news.
Dalia, did you ever think that you lived in a country where you don't have freedom of expression? Did you know this already, or is this news to you?
I knew that, but I always thought that the backlash, especially that I'm not taking a stance that is against the state. I am adopting something that the state is already adopting. The Egyptian state right now is already critical to Hamas, and it fights against Hamas, actually, and has been fighting against Hamas for the past 10 years at least. And it has good relationships with Israel, military relationships and economic relationships. I would even say that if it was not for this cooperation with Israel, Egypt would not have been able to achieve its dream to become a hub for exporting natural gas in the Eastern Mediterranean. If it was not for the security cooperation with Israel in the past 10 years, Egypt would not have been able to get rid of the terrorists in Sinai who were implanted by Hamas, by the way, in 2012 and 2013. But what I did not really expect is attacks that are coming from regular Egyptians who are accusing me of being a traitor and a threat to my country, me a threat to my country, and all the radicals who are cheering for Hamas in the Egyptian street are not a threat to Egypt's national security. That's insane. So unfortunately, it broke my heart. I was very scared. I contacted people I know in the authorities, so unfortunately the response was not positive at all. Although Egypt has a peace treaty with Israel already, Egypt has economic and security cooperation with Israel for over a decade now, or nearly a decade, but still in the deep establishment in Egypt and in most Arab countries, by the way, also, including these countries that are more friendly with Israel recently or has become on peace with Israel, still in the deep establishment, in the deep mindset of the society, there is a lot of hatred towards Israel and towards the Jewish people in general.
And do you think that's because of media, education, all of the above?
All of the above, of course, but most importantly, it's because of the fact that over the years, we have been celebrating our war and conflict with Israel rather than celebrating our peace with Israel. For example, see in Egypt, every year on October 6th, there is a big celebration that happens all over the country about the October 6th war, the 1973 war.
73, 50 years, exactly 50 years ago, yeah.
Exactly, but no one, and not at all, Egypt celebrates the anniversary of the peace accord with Israel. Why not? Why not? In my opinion, we should completely forget about celebrating war. We had a peace treaty that has been in place and has been
successful. And that's held.
Exactly, and it's held for more than 40 years already. Why don't we celebrate that? Why are we celebrating war rather than celebrating peace?
So, Dalia, when you realized your life was at risk, you had to escape the country?
Unfortunately, yes. Within 1 week, I reached, even less than 1 week, I reached an understanding that if I remained longer, I will have to face one of two fates: is either to be killed by some fanatic in the Egyptian street, or the other thing is that, given, unfortunately, all the legal claims filed against me now, I could have been ending up in prison, or in best case scenario, prevented from leaving the country for a very long time, which, to be honest, you know, like, what really breaks my heart is not the radicals, but the fact that all people, exactly.
Dalia, I'm so sorry that you've had to go through this, just for bearing witness and telling the truth.
Thank you, Fleur, but it's sad. It's sad. And actually, it's an indication, like my case is an indication to how things are bad right now in our region. How this massacre and the war and all what we're going through was an eye-opening experience to tell us that there is a lot of radicalism underneath the beautiful surface that we are looking at. We have been talking about peace and
the Abraham Accords.
The Abraham Accords, and everything was fine, let's say, for the past 4 years or so. People were very positive, but just with the first scratch in the surface, all this ugliness came up, and it's now leading the public opinion.
I'm so sorry that you had to go through this and that you were in the front lines of that terrible hatred. And could you give us maybe one optimistic thought in terms of what could happen in the future, how you could perhaps return home?
Yes, actually, I think one optimistic thought for the whole scene, not particularly for me, is that I am sure if we continue to speak up, if we continue to tell the truth, more and more people will be joining our train and leaving the other train of the radicals. Because I believe, actually, I'm not the only voice in Egypt or in the Arab regions that want to say what I said. The only difference is that I was open enough to get on the stage and say it, you know.
You were brave enough. You were brave enough.
Thank you. Thank
Dalia,
you, Fleur.
You were brave enough. You're a brave woman. And thank you so much for leaving us with that positive thought. And inshallah, I hope that at some point we'll be able to get back onto that track, because there's only one way forward, and that is peace.
Thank you, Fleur. Thank you.
Okay, and then on to our very popular segment, Scumbag of the Week. Vivian, I want to start with you, because Vivian always has a very interesting angle to the heroes and the scumbags. So please elaborate and illuminate us who your Scumbag of the Week is this week.
Okay, well, I will start off by, apologizing to all of the major fans of either. I have a little scumbag duo, harsh language, but yeah, my scumbag duo is Elon Musk and Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. He was a hero a little while ago.
That's what I want to remind everybody. He was your hero about 2 weeks ago. Okay.
So I take no prisoners. No loyalties, exactly. No loyalties
Exactly.
here. I found their little stunt, and I think it was a stunt, in Israel yesterday, the day before, when Elon got on a plane and came over, and he spent the day with Bibi in his very ill-fitting vest that wouldn't close. My daughters pointed that out to me. I, of course, didn't notice it.
No.
But so they, he comes and he sits and he meets with Bibi and all kinds of important people. And then they, get in a motorcade, I guess, and they go down to Gaza and they show him, here are tunnel holes and here, destroyed buildings and here's what we're up to and here's our strategy. And it's all great. And then after he has a meeting, I think it was afterwards, and he meets with some hostage families and they gave him the tag, to remember forever, which is actually very touching in isolation. But if you put the whole thing together, to me, it's very troubling for a number of reasons. First of all, Elon might be like a really, really wealthy guy, but he's not a world leader. And very powerful. But he's not a world leader.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. It's just the visuals of the prime minister in wartime taking a day to go on a little, a TUL, go on an outing with
a billionaire.
With the CEO. Yeah, it's just bad optics. It's inappropriate. He should have met with him in his office and let somebody else go down to the front with him. But why is he doing it? Why are these two engaged in this kind of toxic PR, tango? Because that's what it is. They're doing it because Elon Musk has a habit of stepping on landmines, metaphorical landmines, of course. Yeah. And, he went after hard the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League.
Tell us
and
a little bit about that story. Tell us about that story, because he would claim that the ADL went after him.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because it was right before October 7th, and I was really hard on that story. And I think the next day I was going to be interviewing Greenblatt, and then all hell broke loose. But, bottom line is Elon Musk came out and he said, the ADL is driving this kind of boycott of my platform. They're demonizing me. They're saying that I allow and spread anti-Semitism on X and encourage the kind of, that kind of discussion. And because of them, I've lost, some days he would say 20 million, some days he would say $40 million of advertising revenue. So he said, he came out and he made a very specific accusation. He said, ADL started this boycott list, right? And they went around and they got all of these companies to boycott my platform for advertising. And that's why I suck at business. That's why the X platform is doing so poorly commercially. Well, first of all, not true. Okay. Factually untrue. And secondly, it was like an attention grabber, clearly, right?
Is he still
Elon Musk sort of?
Yeah, no, he was suing them,
So
right?
he threatened to sue. All I can say is, the last time I checked on this issue, which was before October 7th, no lawsuit had been issued. I predict that he never intended to issue any lawsuit because it just wasn't going to work for him, even for attention. And in fact, I would speculate that the opposite is in the works, that the ADL is probably working on suing him. But so Elon's just been playing, he's been he's boosted some very overt anti-Semitic mouthpieces, megaphones on the platform. I happened to get tangled up in one kind of ugly little kind of mess a few months ago. So it's clear he's trying to play both sides of the game. I mean, I don't think he really cares. I just don't think he really cares. I think he's kind of agnostic on all of this. He's like, what can drive my platform? What can make me money? Fine. Yeah. So that's just one. The ADL thing is just one of many little kind of, incidents that he's provoked.
You know what else he did? He finally, answered about the Ayatollah too. Did you see that?
What did he say? That he kept Khamenei on X.
There was an ongoing campaign with hundreds of thousands of signatures. But he's never answered anybody about this issue about removing Khamenei. And a few weeks ago, he responded, I don't remember if it was mine or someone else's, but he responded saying, well, the reason he isn't removed is because we have a different rule for world leaders and we go according to the UN. What?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's something else made up.
Exactly. He just makes stuff up. But then remember, shortly after the whole ADL lawsuit thing, Bibi flew out and sat in studio with Elon. And again, so Bibi is basically lending his stature, whatever that is, as Prime Minister of Israel to whitewash this guy. right? To cleanse him of any allegation of anti-Semitism. And wow, Elon gets to host, this really important guy for hours in his studio. It's all not appropriate. It's not dignified. It's not statesmanlike. And so Elon was getting into a little more trouble. And he's like, hey, I'm going to hop on a plane. I'm going to go over. I'm going to put on the hostage tag. And you know what? 2 weeks from now, he'll do something else. He'll say something else. The hostage tag won't be there. That's what I think. And so I just think the whole thing is really kind of in the gutter. It's just gutter.
Okay.
It's gutter PR. It's gutter attention grabbing. And it is definitely, I don't care so much about Elon and his spaceships and his money. I really don't. I'm sure he's a great guy to party. Maybe not. But I do care about the Prime Minister of Israel. Kind of lowering himself. And if he, to debasing the office, debasing the institution and the importance of it, to turn himself into this like tour guide, with Elon Musk. He should have called his son Yair, pulled him back from the poolside where he's been hanging out in Miami since the war broke out. And that's Yair's beat. Yair's the social media guru of the family. You want to do that? Get your son to take the tech titan on a trip. But don't you do it yourself as prime minister, not in my name.
One small pushback on this. Is there anything practical that Elon is helping Israel with in the war in terms of internet in Gaza? These are the things I've been reading.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been reading the same things. And the truth is, I don't know. Do you know?
No.
He says one thing and then it changes the next day, right?
Well, not only that, you have to consider the fact that when it comes to Starlink, you can't aid a terrorist organization. So if it can be demonstrably proven that he's aiding a terrorist organization by providing Starlink, he's in violation of U.S. law. Forget about Israel. So I think you're right. I think you're onto something. If he could, he might. Yeah, he might actually do that. I don't think he can. I hope at least.
Okay.
So I was being very kind of,
Nice.
polite, but
Yeah.
polite. But yeah, no, that's exactly the point. Is if he was able to, I don't think anything would actually stop him. Yeah. This is a guy who hosts Khamenei, and he continues to boost these rank anti-Semites on various platforms, like on Spaces and all these things, and he directly engages. So I know there's this, yeah. So okay, I'll stop.
It's very clear who your scumbag duo of the week is. Emily, who's your scumbag of the week?
I also kind of have a duo.
Okay.
But one is a clear scumbag and one is a clear hero.
So you want to do the whole thing.
They
now.
complement each
You're
other.
doing a Vivian. Okay, let's go.
A Vivian, yeah. So basically, this week there was a big scandal on social media because a Palestinian activist, Salma Shawa, I think her name is, an influencer on social media, made a video about how Iranian women need to shut up, her words, because they're being too pro-Israel and it's spreading Islamophobia and they should be supporting Palestine. And if they're not supporting Palestine, then they need to stop talking. Which, of course, if you've ever met an Iranian woman, is not going to go over very well with Iranians. So the Iranian women have responded very resoundingly all throughout the day, at least yesterday, since I think the video came out a couple days ago. All the influencers, all of the voices, the social activists, the women's rights activists have been like, who are you to be telling us to shut up? We've lived under a regime like Hamas for 44 years, which brings me to my hero, Elika Liban. She's been a really fantastic activist for women's rights, for the Iranian issue. I think she lives on the East Coast, but she's originally from London.
Right.
So she's really seeing all the perspectives here, Europe, US, and of course, Iran. And she made a very compelling video in response to this woman, saying that, no one will silence Iranian women. We've been dealing with people who've been trying to silence us for decades. It's not going to happen. We are stronger now more than ever, and that will continue, and we stand with Israel. And Elika is actually a very interesting voice, because at the beginning of this operation, she was not pro-Israel by any means. In fact, she previously had been pretty vocal activist for Palestinian rights, which is fine. It's not necessarily mutually exclusive.
No, absolutely.
But she was by no means pro-Israel by her own admission. And I think within 1 or 2 days of October 7th, she herself wrote a post saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to the Jewish community for the way that I have acted in the past, for the opinions that I had, for my inability to see that Hamas and this whole anti-Israel Palestinian obsession, it isn't about Palestinians.
Exactly.
It isn't about what's best for the future state of Palestine or the Palestinian people or Palestinian women. It is only about hating Jews. It is only about hating Israel. And she said explicitly how the Jewish community is being gaslit. And X is happening, and then people are responding and saying, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen.
It didn't happen, but you did it. We didn't do it. You did it.
Exactly.
Worse.
So it's been a relief to see that other people are seeing this and that we're not all collectively crazy.
Exactly.
And I appreciate that a lot.
Well, that's a great hero that counterbalances your scumbag. So my scumbag of the week actually is an organization, the International Red Cross. And I can't tell you how, well, I'm not disappointed because we kind of always knew who they were, but I've got even my own little personal connection to this. My mother, who unfortunately passed away last year, my mother was a nurse. And in the 1960s, when she qualified as a nurse, she went to try and get a job at the International Red Cross, first of all in Morocco, and then she moved to Switzerland, where she actually ended up being a nurse in a hospital in Switzerland. She needed to support her family. And they didn't employ her. And they wrote her a letter that because she was Jewish, she wouldn't be able to work there. Now, this is of the early 60s when apparently anti-Semitism is not something you need to hide. And
not that you
mother,
need to hide it these days.
No, yeah, exactly. But my mother was always eating herself up that she never kept that letter, that she tore it up in anger. And that her whole lives, I remember her telling us a story of that letter for the International Red Cross. So I kind of knew who they were, but they have really taken the biscuit in this particular war. First of all, they have not gone to see any of the hostages, even though it's now part of this deal, essentially. They have not gone to see any of the hostages. The fact that they are now picking up the hostages and giving themselves that kind of, we are the saviors, it makes me sick. It makes me sick that they've taken the attention that they don't deserve as the people physically taking the hostages from A to B, and they've given them this kind of aura of saving. When one of the women that came out, her daughter went on Israeli TV the next day and said they refused to even go to give her mother the medication she needed. This is the woman who, when she arrived in Israel, was almost half dead. They had to put her in emergency in the ICU. And only yesterday, her condition became stable because the International Red Cross did not go and actually lobby for this woman to get her medicines.
So none of them. They haven't given any of them.
Nothing. They haven't seen them. They haven't helped us with food. Now they'll say Hamas doesn't let us. I don't buy it. The International Committee of the Red Cross, because when you want, you can be there. And also, let's not forget that a lot of these international organizations in Gaza have been completely infiltrated by Hamas and their operatives. It has, the WHO has been infiltrated, UNRWA, all the committees are full of Hamas snakes in UNRWA, education, sure. But to add insult to injury about the International Committee of the Red Cross, they wrote a letter to the prison authority a couple of weeks ago, the Israeli prison authority, to ask and demand how we were treating the prisoners, the terrorists who we have in our custody. So not only are they not visiting our sick, infirm hostages that are being held, this is a war crime, not only are they not involved with that, they're giving themselves a status of saviors by basically driving a Jeep, let's be honest, and then they are worried about the terrorists and the prisoners. And of course, what should we expect from the organization that during the Second World War went and visited a concentration camp and said, nothing to see here, guys, nothing to see here. So my scumbag of the week, and I've been talking about them for quite a while now, and they continue to be, and now I'm even more annoyed because of the status they're giving themselves that they don't deserve, the International Committee of the Red Cross. Okay.
Can I pipe up? Can I jump in?
Yes.
Just, it's pretty much, first, I thank you for mentioning that letter. I wasn't aware of the letter that they wrote to the Israeli authorities. I'd love to see that one. I think that we should do a research mission to the archives and pull out your mom's letter and get it.
Please.
Let's do it. Bring it full circle. But more substantively, what I wanted to say is this. there are these two things about Red Cross conduct that really, really stick in my craw, in addition to what you've pointed out. And one is, we know that the family pulled together with Clalit, one of the HMO health providers in Israel, all of their mother's medication. And they actually went into the office of the head of the Red Cross and sat there and said, she needs this, or she's going to die possibly.
Yeah.
Can you please just take it and try to get it to her? And they're like, not even touching it.
No.
Not even touching it. Not our rule. So, okay. So then, pardon me, but what is your rule?
Who do they serve?
So that's
who do they serve?
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who do they serve?
Like it's sort of like Me Too, but not Jews, right? So
Yeah.
there's that aspect that really shows them in a quite ugly light. And it's a little thing, but it's not. The theater, the very performative nature of the role, and even Hamas took their white vans and smeared green paint all over the windows, right?
Yeah.
They put
Hamas
Hamas
did this.
flags on top of the Red Cross vehicles.
And we know that in the past, they've had
I didn't know
terrorists
that.
being smuggled in Red Cross
In their-
races.
But the Red Cross, the Red Cross, you couldn't cover the windows to give these people who were terrorized by, Allahu Akbar chanting lynch mobs until
And
the very, very end.
on the window.
And you couldn't give them a shred of dignity and get some paper and cover the windows so that at least they have privacy inside the van. No.
Children,
You got
too.
the cameras.
Children.
Hamas did better. Children. Hamas did better than that. And that, to me, it just reflects such a profound disrespect.
Such a good
in
point.
the way they look at Jewish hostages.
Yeah. You know what? That's a great point. I didn't even think about that, but
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
Thank you. No, thank you for making us widen our perspectives. Okay, so we've already heard Emily's Hero of the Week, which contrasts her Scumbag of the Week. Vivian, who's your Hero of the Week?
My Hero of the Week, again, it's a little counterintuitive.
Is it BB again?
I don't. No. I'll have to say that. It is. It's counterintuitive, but hey, I like to blue sky this and really none of my personal kind of barriers or values or anything to come into this. So my Hero of the Week this week is the newly elected Dutch Prime Minister Geert Wilders. Yes. So what's the deal with Mr. Wilders? He's been on the scene. He's actually born the same year as me. So elderly man. And he's been
born in 1994.
He's been at almost the same year as my kid. He's been at this kind of, what's considered to be hard right political agenda for many years. But, what is considered to be a hard right political agenda in Europe has obviously changed over the last 3 decades. But he was elected. It was a surprise even for him. The landslide that he was elected on. And his platform is primarily, it's anti-Muslim immigration.
Right. Why was it a landslide which was unexpected? Who was the?
Well, I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of the polling and the mechanisms in the Netherlands, but I expect that a lot of it had to do with a kind of last minute turnout.
And also probably this. Do you think this probably helped him?
Absolutely. There's no question. Absolutely. Previous prime minister is very much cutting the cloth of Justin Trudeau, which is basically like, hi, I'm tall, I'm handsome, look at me, and here are my pronouns. That's it.
We
That's
can't
the
get through an
substance.
episode of the call.
No, we can't.
Without talking about Justin.
No, we can't.
I'm saying we can't get through an episode of the Quad without talking about Justin Trudeau for Vivian. Okay, go on.
Why would we? But okay, so his name, the previous prime minister's name is Mark Rutte. He is very much a Justin Trudeau type, alienated, kind of regular people, alienated farmers, very aggressive climate agenda. And so, had very far reaching, and many consider obviously to be negative effects on Dutch society, but more so, just like as in France and Germany and in the UK, the Netherlands has a large Muslim immigrant population. It is not integrating. It is causing many of the same problems that we see elsewhere in Europe and in Canada and in some places.
Are they radical? Are they radical or
Yeah.
they're not integrating for economic reasons?
No, there's
I think
a
it's
significant
both.
radical population.
there is a significant radical population, and the Dutch people are a very proud people, as are most European nations, with deep culture and roots, and they're kind of saying we've had enough. Yeah. And so he's saying things out loud that you're not supposed to say, like, we should deport them. If you can't integrate into our culture, then leave. And 10 years ago, this was kind of territory owned by Marine Le Pen and considered to be really out there. And it's now kind of, creeping into the mainstream. And some of it's not good. And some of it, frankly, is good because some of these issues have to be discussed openly and not treated as the elephant in the room.
They are deporting some of them, didn't they? I saw in some of these, in France and Germany both, I think that
the
they
ones
have
that
become,
are not citizens?
Not citizens.
Right.
Yeah, people who came on visas, but I did see that there are some...
Well, I think anybody who's there on a visa, student or tourist visa, who's causing problems and involved in aggressive action, of course, should be deported. What country would tolerate that?
Yeah.
I think there's
Canada.
going to be a big...
We'll take them all. Canada will take them all.
I think there's going to be actually, and I think this is part of the equation, what's happening here, I think there's going to be a real backlash in Europe. I feel it. I see it in different places. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you my own experience because I do a lot of Asbaran press in Spanish, that the Spanish Prime Minister came here, President Pedro Sanchez, and he said some really shocking things, so much so that Hamas thanked him before he left. And the backlash in Spain to what he says may actually bring the other guy into government. He's just formed.
Wow.
He's just formed a government.
Wow.
Spain have actually got a very similar political system as Israel. They have to create coalitions, and he's actually allied himself with some very extreme people in order to stay in power. And I get hundreds of messages every day from Spaniards saying to me, he doesn't represent me, and I'm sorry for what he did. We're ashamed of what he did when he came to your country. So my hero of the week is just became my hero of the week this morning when I saw her picture last night being taken out of the International Committee of the Red Cross Jeep, and the Hamas guy holding her arm to kind of, again, this charade, this facade they've got that somehow they're humanitarian captors. Give me a break. Nobody's buying that. Or telling the children, wave, keep waving. How disgusting. Yeah. But this woman, who is in her early 40s, Ramon Kirsch-Bustag, was pushed, pulled out of the van, and this guy must have been telling her something, and she gave him a look. Like, don't even. I love that look. Everybody's taken the meme.
Yeah, it's a meme now.
Do it for us. All right, do it. Give us the look.
I don't know what that look was. But that look is like, I'm done with you now. I'm getting released now. Don't mess with me. And for that reason, Ramon Kirsch-Bustag, who must have been through hell and back in the last 7 weeks, God bless you. Thank God you're back, and you're my hero of the week. So, ladies, we missed Ashira and her very unique voice, but
it's so weird without her here.
It really is, and this is why we're the quad. It's like we're a table with a missing leg this week.
Oh, now we're a triangle.
We're a triangle. Cool. It's not cool. We need to go back to being a square, and so hopefully we'll be a square again next week. A square, but not square.
Yes.
And we pray, as we do every week, that by the time we get to our next episode, all our hostages will be home. And this horrible nightmare will be over, and we will have gotten rid of this very terrible genocidal regime of Hamas. So thank you so much. Vivian Berkovich in Toronto, Emily Schrader right here with me in Jerusalem. Thank you.